Let's talk about the potential hazards of snoozing our satisfaction to an arbitrary happily ever after point. It's like a goalpost or a mirage out in the desert. If you imagine a piece of paper with a timeline with arrows on both ends, and we are here in the middle, I look to the left and I think of recent message. If you haven't listened to it, I'll link it below, on talking about when we look backwards, when we're starting the habit now and we start to feel the momentum and we're like, ooh, this does feel good to be in action around whatever this habit is that we're creating. And then it's like, oh man, but I wish I had started sooner. So when we're looking backwards with regret, then that doesn't necessarily serve us in this moment and moving forward, but it's normal. It happens. But what I want to talk about in this episode is this idea of happily ever after, to where we're looking forward on the timeline, like to the right, and we're feeling impatient. So we can look back with regret if we didn't start soon enough. We're judging ourselves for that. And then if we're not mindful of it, we'll start to look forward and be like, hurry up. We have proverbial ants in our pants because it's impatient. It's like, okay, cool. Yes, got it. Got it. Now can I get to the end? Now can I see what it's like on the other side? Can I flip to the back of the book, fast forward? And I want to share thoughts around how we can be more patient with the process and how to make it more fun all along the way, so that it's just we all the way home, as opposed to feeling like we're delaying gratification and it's always an arm's length away. It could ultimately become denied gratification and we never even get there for a whole myriad of reasons. How can we be more content with the present? It's not to say ah, perfectly present and perfectly content, but just more content with what's actually going on right now and how life is actually in this moment, real time snapshot. So, the thing about happily ever after, one, Garth Brooks style, if tomorrow never comes, if we are delaying gratification until XYZ endpoint, and it's like, I can't be happy or satisfied until then, what if then never happens, because life is precious at every age and every stage? So let's think about that. I mean, hopefully, let's wish for a long, healthy, fulfilling life for all of us. But what if tomorrow never comes? Because you actually change your mind. You actually start down this track and you're building in these habits and practices, whether it's creatively or financially or physically. And then you're like, I actually don't even want to do a marathon. I'd rather just do a 5K and I will still get a great sense of accomplishment. But like, what was I thinking? I don't even have the desire to spend hours and hours running, Maybe you realize that's actually not even what you want. So we're not going to say I can't be happy unless I do a marathon, because what if you get there and you're like, or you start training and you're like, I actually don't even want to do that. Then you would never feel happy if you never did it. That's not true. That's not real. It's not a thing. So it also can be a moving target because things change and we change. So for example, if one of my air quotes goals, which is a very loosely defined goal, is to rebalance my hormones right now, well, I'm in my late 30s. I'm done having babies. I haven't yet started perimenopause, but that's around the corner in my 40s, in 50s, or whenever. And so rebalancing my hormones right now in this season of life is going to look different a few years from now or a decade from now. And so if I'm like, I'll be happy when I reach perfect hormonal homeostasis or whatever the situation would be, that's not even a thing. So the whole point is I want to feel like I'm learning about how my body works. I don't want to feel confused and like it's a different language. Like how I want to feel when I think of balanced hormones is that I want to feel like I understand how it works. Also, because I have a daughter and I want to be able to explain and help her understand how her body works. But it's like I want to understand it and I want to feel like I'm doing things that actually nourish and support this version of me and my body for decades and decades to come as this body continues to age and change. So that's how I want to feel. And I don't have to wait until I see particular test results or blood work or whatever. I don't have to wait for that. I can actually take these daily steps I've invested in learning and working with professionals and blah, blah. And I'm taking actions that I can feel as soon as I'm actually taking the action, as soon as I take the vitamins, as soon as I do my adrenal mocktail, as soon as I do XYZ workout or prioritize my sleep. I'm like, this is one thing in the bucket of my contentment with today that I feel like I am taking charge of my health and I'm doing what I can do to help my body feel stronger and more in balance. So those are some of the things to watch out for with the happily ever after, because we might change course. No day is guaranteed. And also just things change. So it is like a mirage in the desert. It's not a real coconut tree. By the time we get to it and we're crawling across the desert looking for water, it's actually not even really there. It's just a moving goalpost, and that's okay. And that's how it's meant to be, because that's how we grow and change and we reach for something new. It's like our babies couldn't hold their heads up at first, and then they started to roll over, and then the next thing is the crawling or the sitting up, and then the rocking, and then the crawling, and all of these things. It's like that's what we're meant to do. We're meant to reach one milestone, and then we want to stretch and grow and reach for another. That feels good because we're curious. Ideally, if we've got our energy, then we're curious and we want to stretch and explore and learn something new. So that's just going to happen. So when you find yourself feeling impatient and you just want to be like, oh, it's just going to take too long, again, you start to lean back into the regret and wish I'd started sooner. Hurry up, hurry up. It's like the movie Click. Did you ever watch the movie Click with Adam Sandler and Kate Beckinsale years ago? And he has a remote control and he realizes it works on, he can hit mute, he can hit fast forward, he can rewind to different moments of time. And it's like we might think we just want to hit fast forward. I've used this example in business before. It's like you might think you want your business to grow faster and you hit fast forward, but then your kids are growing up faster too, and then you missed it, you know? And so we just have to be careful of the unintended consequences of just wishing that we could rush through a particular week or a moment or season of life, because there's actually all kinds of goodness. It's like if you're driving down the highway at a certain speed, you naturally can only see, your peripheral vision isn't as strong. The slower you go, the more you can see and the more you can notice and the more your eyes can take in and the more information that your brain can process. But if we're going so fast and we're rushy pants, then we can't actually see and notice all the things that are actually here around us. So, what can we do when we notice the ants in our pants? One, it's normal, it's fine. We don't need to like shame ourselves for it or anything. It's normal. That's why I'm recording this, because I feel that way too sometimes. So, I'm sharing this as always, as much for me as for you. But one idea I have is to, when you want to be more content with the present, that's the flex. It's like we're not just waiting for happily ever after. We're using happily ever after, whatever this outcome is that you imagine is going to feel great. We're going to use it, like it's beneficial to see it and have it out there on the horizon, because now we can see, how do I imagine I'm going to feel when I have completed this project, this book, I've run this 5K, I've saved this much in my savings account, or blah, blah, blah. Whatever it is, what is it that I imagine I'm going to feel? And we're using that for intel, because it's like, how can I actually, like a fruit infusion, how can I infuse that into my day-to-day life now so that I already feel like a success? Like I said, with examples for hormones and things, it's when I'm actually taking those actions to prioritize my physical well-being today, I already feel like a winner in that sense, because I'm doing what I can do. That's all I can do. We'll see what happens. I can't control all the outcomes of that, but I know that today I'm doing what I can do. So how can you add pleasure to the process so that you feel like an instant winner? And this goes back to the idea of internal tracking before, during, and after. It's like, how do you actually feel when you're taking the action? And if it's not very great right now, then how can you add more pleasure? Again, imagine the fruit infusion, the strawberry or the cucumber or whatever, lemon to your drink. How can you infuse these actions with more pleasure? Is it what you're wearing when you're working out? I put my supplements in a shot glass I bought in Viña del Mar on the beach when I was studying abroad in Chile in college. Like, how can you add little moments that make each of these practices just feel more pleasurable to you, more delightful to your senses or to your heart? If it's about pairing it with pairing whatever your habit is with a social activity, calling your mom or your best friend, or taking your kids with you on a walk and feeling like you're really connecting with them about their day. How can you infuse that pleasure into the process so that it becomes an instant winner? It's an instant micro happily ever after, because you're more content with the present, because you're paying more attention and squeezing all that you can, like all the juice from this moment. So I shared about how I feel when I'm recording these podcasts. I love recording these podcasts with the intent to actually share them with you, because our conversations are important to me. I love a mutual inspiration society. So just the idea that one day you will listen to this, which is so cool. Thanks for listening to this. That gives me energy right now in this moment, even if you're listening to this years into the future, which is so cool, because then it just keeps giving and giving. one of the things that I've been struggling with when it comes to writing my book is that it just feels so far away from sharing it with you. It's like the feedback loop is just way too big. So what I'm going to try when I start working on it again is to share the behind the scenes of my creative process with you here via the podcast so that I can share it with you in close to real time rather than feeling like, oh my gosh, everything I'm putting into this doc and have put into this doc and reorganized multiple times over the last handful of years, it just feels like it's so far away from actually sharing it with you. And that's the pleasure for me, is having these conversations and sharing my ideas with you in an organized, cohesive format. I don't have to wait for the book to do that. I can do that in podcast form or an email or whatever else it is. So that is helping infuse pleasure into the process for me. And then bonus, ultimately, one day the book will exist in various forms and that'll be exciting. But I'll then have new challenges because then instead of all the calls coming from inside the house of my critique and feedback loops of being my own harshest critic, then I can outsource that to strangers that I've never met. And somebody will write me a 1-star review and I'll have different challenges then. But that just goes back to the idea that the happily ever after, it's just a mirage and a moving target. And it's great for us to see what we want and what we want to move towards. But it's more about all the moments, these little mini micro happily ever afters all along the way. That's really what it's all about. And I used to roll my eyes when, and I still probably will roll my eyes when it's like, it's not about the outcome, it's about the person you become along the way. And it's like, nah, that sounds nice, but it's really hard to get your grip on that when you're in a state where you're resisting the habits, which is why I have recorded all of these messages with you for you to document the things that have been helpful to me in getting into action. And it's just a few months. It's not like I have it all figured out, but it has all of these, thinking about the habits in these various ways that I've been sharing with you in these last several episodes, it really has helped me feel like a different version of myself for the better. Like I feel more energized. I feel more clicked in. I feel more present with myself, with my projects, with my family. And I would love for you to experience what that feels like, because then again, you're not waiting for the happily ever after. No one's going to prioritize this for us because nobody can. Nobody knows except for you what actually feels satisfying and energizing to you. So you've got to take it on. So all that to say, think about whatever it is that this imaginary end game that you have in mind. What is it that you want to feel then? How can you feel that now? How can you infuse that and add pleasure to the process, that instant winner vibe? How can you make your day-to-day practices feel more like that? How can you find more juice in this day, afternoon, in this moment, and then ultimately this life? Because that's what it is. That's the ultimate stack in compounding effect. If we can think about each moment where we have the presence of mind to actually ask ourselves these questions, how can you add more pleasure to the process? Because it will all add up and it has a ripple effect, not just with you, but with the people you love and that you live with and that you work with and that you serve and your community and all of that. And isn't that worthwhile? That's the ultimate happily ever after. All right. I hope this helps. Let me know your thoughts. Hit the link to the comment box and I will meet you back here soon. Okay, technically that was the end of the episode, but since you're still here, 1, I'd love to thank you for spending part of your day with me, and 2, I'd love to ask you if you would take 30 seconds, maybe 60, to leave a rating and review in your podcast app before you tap out today. If you've already done that, it's amazing. Please send me a screenshot so I can thank you personally, and know that sharing this episode with a friend has the same magical powers, and I deeply appreciate both. Also, in case you're listening to the end to see if I ever actually introduce myself, hi! My name is Nikki Elledge Brown. I'm the host and author of Naptime Empires and this here On Her Terms podcast. You can find me around the internet at Nikki Elledge Brown in most places, but what you may appreciate most is actually over at onherterms.com. It's what I call the insider library. It's where you can get inside scoop, first listen rights, email updates every time there's a new episode, and then special insider only bonus content. It's all over in our private feed. Okay, that's a wrap for real. I'll meet you in the next episode.